on those issues that aren't good for Southwest Georgia. And it won't matter to me what they say they can do to me or they can't do to me. You've elected me, you set me up there, so they got to put up with me till you elect somebody else.
That's right.
Mr. Bishop, would you please point out any differences that you might have with your party's leadership?
When I go to Washington, I try to carry the values of the people of the 2nd Congressional District. And those values, I believe, are God, country, work, family, and guns, and not necessarily in that order. I differ with our leadership on a number of issues related to those values. When it comes to work and agriculture and the Farm Bill, because of different regions of the country, our leadership does not always go along with our positions of our needs for here in the southeastern United States and in the 2nd Congressional District on agricultural issues. For example, the payment limitation issue. It's different from the Midwest, it's different from the West, but we have specific issues here in the Southeast. And I fight for our positions here, and we do that across the aisle. But it's against the Republican leadership often and against the Democratic leadership. I had fights with President Bush about the Farm Bill and protecting Southwest Georgia agriculture. I've had fights with President Obama. I had fights with President Clinton about it. So it's a regional thing, not always, and sometimes you can't go along with the leadership because you have to look after the people who sent you. It's like that turtle that you see perched up on the fence post. When you see him there, you know somebody put him there, didn't get there by himself. Well, I know as an elected official, I represent the people of the 2nd Congressional District. Look at the National Rifle Association and our position on guns. Our leadership is not pro-gun, but we've got a number of people in our party who are, and we can turn a vote when it comes to guns to make sure that we protect that Second Amendment, and we do. So our leadership can't run over us there. We disagree with it, but we make sure that we protect the Second Amendment. Don't ask, don't tell. Our leadership was for that. I voted against it. Same-sex marriage, I do not believe in that. I believe marriage should be between one man and one woman. Yeah! I also believe that we come from the Bible Belt. I'm a Christian. And I went to school for 12 years and we prayed every day before the beginning of school. I don't think it did me any harm. I support our prayer in schools and public places. On the energy bill, we had to fight like the Dickens with our leadership. They wouldn't even consider nuclear as an option. They also wanted to put the EPA on the farms with green emissions, greenhouse gas emissions, excuse me. And of course, we fought that. And as a consequence, we were able to get some concessions so that the EPA cannot come on the farm to regulate greenhouse gases from our livestock. We had also on defense. Our leadership was against, and the president was against the dual engines. Well, our district, United Technologies, Pratt Whitney, makes that second engine. They wanted to have that option to participate. Well, we had to go with the district.
All right, Mr. Bishop, please wrap it up. Thank you. All right, would you like to make any rebuttal to this?
Yeah, I think we know when you talk about having problems or voting your district or all these kind of things, but when you're living in Southwest Georgia and you're voting 97.7% of the time with Nancy Pelosi, something ain't right, Bringing up the NRA endorsement, I'll tell you this, I have an A rating with the NRA also. And, you know, the NRAs are like a lot of lobby groups. They have an incumbent protection policy, which means until he does, I mean, he can do just about anything, but they're still going to endorse him until he gets out of office. And they'll do the same thing for me when I get in office, you know. I'm supposed to appreciate that. But at the same time, you know, if this NRA, we could settle this thing by just getting the NRA members of the 2nd Congressional District, and they could vote on us if you'd like to do that. We just make that the vote. See who comes out.
We'll see you on November 2nd.
your fundraising for this election? How much money have you raised? How much came from political action committees? How much money came from out of state, et cetera? And why would someone from out of state donate to your campaign in the first place? We'll start with you, Mr. Bishop.
First off, I have
First question was how much money did you raise and how much of it came from political action?
You mean how much I raised cumulatively over a 2-year period? How much did I raise in the last reporting period? I can tell you exactly for the last reporting period, it's approximately $531,000, 530 something for the third quarter. And if the breakdown is approximately 289 or so from individuals, and the rest of it was from political action committees. Political action committees consist of carpenters, firefighters, electricians, nurses, doctors, dentists, anesthetists, teachers. So those political action committees are basically allow contributions that come from their membership who cannot afford to write a big check, but they allow a little bit to come out of that pay every week or every month so that they can have some influence in the political races and make contributions to candidates who represent the values and the issues that they believe the government.
Part of the question was how much of this money came from out of state, and why do you think someone from out of state would donate to your campaign?
People who have interest, for example, we grow more peanuts in Georgia than any other state, but they also grow peanuts in Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Alabama, Texas, California, and of course, when they find a representative who adequately represents the interests of the peanut industry, people from wherever they are would like to support that representative. The same thing is true with the Chamber of Commerce, the same thing is true with any of the other interest groups, whether they're medical groups, dental groups, or working groups. So people who also may be classmates of mine, who may be friends of mine, who live in other parts of the country, who may be relatives of mine, would like to support them, to support me, and I appreciate those contributions.
All right, before we move over to Mr. Keown, in your estimation, what percentage of your total fundraising came from out-of-state contributions?
I can't make an estimate. I can of course refer you to the FEC report, and you can see and you can document it because the addresses of every contributor are required to be provided with the FEC report. But I think that the fact that I have a long record of service in a lot of areas, defense industry, military construction, veterans issues, and all of the veterans, for example, the Veterans of Foreign Wars PAC has endorsed me, and of course their PAC is based in Washington. And of course, but they have members all over the country.
All right, let's allow Mr. Keown to answer these same questions, and that is, assess your fundraising for this election. How much money have you raised? How much came from political action committees? How much money came from out of state? And why do you think someone from out of state would give money to you?
You know, I don't know the exact numbers. I can tell you we raised a little bit over $800,000 for this campaign. One of the things we had to get people to realize in the beginning was that we could win. And it took a while to get folks on board. But let me tell you something, it's moving now. The last quarter we raised about $370,000. Probably less than $70,000 of that has come from any kind of PACs or out-of-state contributions. We are outraising the congressman big time in his own district. Most of those contributions, $50 contributions, $100 contributions, $200 contributions, $4 cash in an envelope with an address saying, here, we're praying for you, we want you to win. The people of this district, it is a grassroots movement. Let me tell you something. It is not being guided by anybody else, and everybody's talking about the Republican Party's running my campaign. No, the Republican Party's not running my campaign. You know, we're running the campaign, and we're getting the support of the grassroots people all over this 2nd district. That's what's made this thing great. That's what's made it all come together. I want to thank you for it.
One brief rebuttal, Mr. Bishop, then we're going to move on to my last question.
I'm just pleased that I've had contributions from people as little as $1 all the way up to the maximum of $2 I'm glad that poor people, people of all demographics support my candidacy in this congressional district and out of this congressional district. I think that what we do in the 2nd congressional district, what we do in Washington, not only affects people in the 2nd district, but it affects people all over the country.
How many did you give earmarks to?
And good government. And I appreciate those people who recognize our service.
If you want to see the rest of the story, though, if you wonder why a congressman in Southwest Georgia would be asking for earmarks for Virginia or New York or Washington or California, look where that money comes from. And that money's going back.
All right, Mr. Keown, I want to ask you the same direct question that I asked Mr. Bishop. In your estimation, what percentage of your campaign contributions have come from out of state?
Less than 10%.
Let's move on to the last question that I have, and let's try to keep this one brief because I just want you to answer in just one short couple of sentences here. Both of you have been in public service for more than 20 years. What would you consider to be your crowning legislative achievement? Mr. Keown?
The thing that, as far as being a public servant, my crowning achievement is that I've built reputation, for representing my district first. Over 4 years serving as mayor of Coolidge, 14 years on Thompson County School Board, 6 years in Georgia House. I have built a reputation. I built a reputation. People know they can trust me. What you see is me is what you get. You know. If you don't like what you see, then don't vote for me because this is what you're going to get. Because I'm not going to change. But I've stood up for my district first. And I believe, you know, I'm not about building up a big political resume. I've talked about the fact I don't plan to stay in Washington that long. I believe in term limits. I believe we ought to have term limits. I've already made a commitment to the term limit myself at 8 years. If I get the opportunity to stay 8 years, I'll be done and gone. Somebody else will come in, probably a whole lot better looking and younger than I am. But you know, seriously, this is it. This is as good as it gets. I will be this way from now on. That's the kind of reputation I've built. That's a trust. That's the crowning achievement, I guess, of my political career.
All right. During your legislative service, Mr. Bishop, what would you consider to be your crowning legislative achievement?
When I went to Congress, I served on several authorizing committees. There are two kinds of committees in the Congress, authorizing and appropriations. The authorizing committees say what money can be spent on. Appropriations committees actually spend the money. Well, I served on the Agriculture Committee, doing agriculture policy. I served on the Veterans Committee. I served on the Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence. I served on the Post Office Service Committees. Then I got a seat on the Appropriations Committee. That, I believe, put me in a position on the Defense Subcommittee, which has jurisdiction over every weapon system, military personnel,